All right, back with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's running for president of the United States, and there is another clear distinction he has with his two primary opponents in that race, Donald Trump and his legal problems. Of course, Donald Trump has now officially become a convicted felon. Many people in his camp say that's unfair, and it's very likely very soon that Hunter Biden could carry that same label. Not exactly good timing for his father around the time of the big debate that so far Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has not been invited to. Back with us. So, Robert, what do you think of that? That you're looking at a guy in Donald Trump who is running and leading in the polls as a convicted felon, doesn't seem to make a big difference to a lot of people. The same could be that Joe Biden's support doesn't wane, at least among his core group, whether his son becomes a convicted felon or not. What do you make of all of that?
Like I said earlier, Neil, I try to avoid these issues. I think it's I think one of the things that we worry about is the weaponization of the judicial system, and it seems like the Democrats feel like they don't have a candidate who can win the election, and so they have to win it in a court. And this case, I think of the three cases brought against him, was the weakest case, and appears from its history that it was earlier rejected by prosecutors, and it seemed to have been revived for political reasons. Now, let me say one thing. President Trump was doing the same thing. When President Trump was running, he was demanding that Hillary should be locked up, and he was, promising to appoint a special prosecutor. I think either side is bad. I don't think, it's like a banana republic in our country. We don't want that reputation. People are going to be derailed from seeking political office because of, by using the courts. And I think the DNC, by promoting these kind of cases, is really doing itself and the American public a disfavor. President Trump raised $200 million within 2 days of this because there is anxiety and outrage among the American people. And I would say this, if the Democrats won this way, they would leave half the country desperately embittered and angry, and ultimately we're going to become ungovernable. Is this the trajectory that we want to start on? Or are we going to do what democracy says, which is even people with all their flaws and all of their warts, people ought to still be able to vote for who they want without interference from the courts.
Well, you talk about retribution and the appetite for that. Wouldn't Donald Trump have that? And maybe to hear some of the supporters, rightly so, because he has been maligned and targeted and piled on, and that if he gets back in the White House, he'll start dishing it out.
Yeah, and that's the problem with this. It's going to be tit for tat, and if the Democrats now control these Democratic prosecutors are now going after President Biden. They set a terrible, terrible precedent, and you get somebody in office like President Trump who is not embarrassed about his impulse for revenge. Then, you've set this terrible precedent, and our country's going down a very, very, I think, dark road if we start, conducting elections in the courts.
Well, Donald Trump has said that his best revenge, just to paraphrase, would be success. He's going to bring success back to the country. He has hedged on that a little bit in one recent interview, but I'm wondering what you think of that and what you think a return to the White House of Donald Trump would look like.
Well, I don't know. What I would hope would happen is that President Trump would reverse his earlier promises to keep us in war in the Ukraine, to go to war against other countries, to bomb Russia. I hope he doesn't do that. I hope he starts dealing with the debt. He ran up the biggest debt in United States history, $8 trillion in 4 years, more money spent during that 4 years. And every president in our U.S. history combined, from George Washington to George W. Bush, President Biden's done the same thing. President Biden is adding $1 trillion in debt every 90 days.
A lot of that debt for Donald Trump. You're right. A lot of it wasn't asked before COVID, but a good chunk of it with COVID and through that. So that there is a bit of an asterisk.
Yeah, but and why? Exactly. And why did he shut down the country? Why did he shut down 3.3 million businesses with no scientific citation?
So if you got into a debate, if you were lucky enough to get into a debate with these guys, Robert, for Donald Trump, that's where you would zero in. His handling of COVID and how he handled it.
Yeah, and that would be one of the things. I'd also, I'd talk about the wars, about the national debt, about the COVID lockdowns, about the chronic disease epidemic, about the vitriol. How are they, either of them, able to end the vitriol between Americans and the hatred, since they both feed on it? They're both products of it. All of these, his promising that he's going to drain the swamp and appointing an oil lobbyist to run the Department of Interior, pharmaceutical lobbyist to run FDA and HHS, John Bolton to run NSA, Mike Pompeo to run the CIA and the State Department, these swamp creatures who are part of the whole corrupt merger of state and corporate power, who came in and did favors for industry, and that is the swamp, and we need. I
think some of those gentlemen might disagree with that characterization, but we don't know. We will see. But Robert, I want to thank you, and I do want to express my sympathies. I know it's been 56 years. I'm sure it's a day you cannot forget. I remember myself. I'm a little younger than you, but that was a dark turn in American history. You and your family got through that, but it cannot be easy, especially this day. Thank you very much.
Oh, Neil, thank you for those thoughts. It means a lot to me. I'm grateful.
All right. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., always love to have you back.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.